Okay, I'd like to spend a few minutes to talk about charts. Most of the charts can be downloaded for free at the NOAA website at nauticalcharts.noaa.gov. You can download the latest individual charts from this site, or you can just use the RNC viewer. The benefit of the RNC viewer is you can immediately just pick up any spot you want on this global chart here. We're interested in the San Francisco Bay Area, so let me put my cursor over that, and let's zoom in here to San Francisco. We'll drill all the way down and continue drilling down until we start getting some details here. And this is probably the chart that you're used to seeing on most of the boats on the bay. Um, I like using the individual charts though. The individual charts are the latest. They have the latest updated information. So I have the San Francisco chart downloaded already, and let's take a look at that. So this is called the entrance to San Francisco Bay. It's also referred to as chart number 18649. I'm going to assume that most of you know how to read a chart, but I want to go over a couple of basic details as it relates to figuring out what the low tides are at your departure port and your destination port. Okay. So the brown area is all land. When you look at this, the first time that I looked at a chart, it looked totally weird to me. I just couldn't figure it out for at least 5 or 10 minutes before it kind of sunk in as to what I was actually seeing. So what you're seeing here is the brown area is the land. This is the city of San Francisco here, across the bay. Here's Oakland, here's Berkeley, Richmond, and over here the Marin Peninsula. What you're seeing here in the blue and white colors are the waters of the bay. The white color indicates deep water, the blue color indicates shallow water. And the numbers that you're seeing sprinkled throughout the chart indicate what the average low tide is at that spot. So let me zoom in a little bit here, and let's take a look at this line here that's separating the deep water from the shallow water. If you come down this line, pretty much anything over 37 feet is considered deep water. Anything 36 and below is considered shallow water. Now, if I zoom out and take a good look at this chart, you can see that most of the bay is shallow. Look at all this blue here, and blue, and blue, and blue down here. The deep water is pretty much the middle of the bay, and everything else is very shallow. Now, if we come in on the east part of the bay, which is where you really need to be careful of if you're sailing on the east part of the bay, you can see that most of the low tide numbers are very low. The Richmond Inner Harbor low tide can be as low as 4 feet, 4 feet, 4 feet, 5 feet here. Coming out of the Berkeley Yacht Harbor, it's 6 feet and 5 feet coming up to this wall here. And even if you came a third of the way into the bay, you still have areas here that are only 6 feet at low tide. So if you have a large draft on your boat, and it turns out to be low tide and you're not paying attention, it's easy to run aground on most of San Francisco. It's very easy to run aground. So you need to pay attention to your tides in these areas. So I like to plan my charters 30 days in advance after picking a good day that I think is going to work for both the tides and the currents. By planning 30 days in advance, I'm pretty much guaranteed to get the boat that I want and took a great day. Having said that, I have a charter coming up on the 18th of August, and what I like to do to prepare for my charters, the first thing I do is book my boat 30 days in advance, so I get the boat that I want. The next thing I like to do is to plan out some strategies. So for this charter, we're going to be leaving from Ballina Bay, Alameda. We'll be going to Angel Island for lunch, getting off the boat for about an hour, then getting back on the boat and sailing the upper bay. We'll be tacking along the Golden Gate Bridge here, coming down to the city front, and then we have another stop off at McCovey Cove. But the first thing I need to do is determine what is the low tide for my port of departure. So let's come down here to Alameda. And we'll zoom in real tight here to Ballina Bay. This is the Ballina Bay area right in here. You can see the 7 foot tide marker comes all the way in and down to our harbor and all the way to the back. So all this coming around here and coming out is all at the 7 foot level, leading all the way out to the bay. When they do some dredging here, it can be as deep as 8 feet, but I would go at 7 feet just to be safe. Okay. So now that I know my low tide at Ballina Bay is 7 feet. What I also like to do on my charters is I actually take screenshots, snippets of the individual areas from my departure port to my arrival port, just to have them, and I print them out and I put them on a binder, just in case your app fails. So I have a snippet over here, an example of the Ballina Bay. Let me pull that up for you. So this is the same area that you just saw with some notations here indicating that it's 7 feet. Check the draft of your boat. And I've actually indicated with a yellow highlight that 7 foot, and the safest way to depart our harbor at 7 feet is along this line here, coming out here. Okay, it's also the safest entry point at low tide, although I don't recommend entering at too much of a low tide into our harbor. Over here in red, I've indicated to watch out for this 2 foot shelf. It's very dangerous. You need to avoid that by all costs. You don't want to run aground on this 2 foot shelf. We do have a couple of buoys here marking that, so just remember right red returning to the 2 buoys here. We also have an obstruction here. This is a dangerous outcropping of rocks. At high tide you can barely see them. So when you enter the harbor, just be careful you don't smack into those rocks or you're going to shred your boat. Now, if you take out the same boat on every charter, for example, if you own a boat and you know that your draft, or the length of your draft is 6 feet, then that's an easy thing for you to remember. You don't have to worry too much. It's always going to be 6 feet. But if you're a charter like I am, and you take out different size boats, the larger the boat, the larger the draft's going to be. So we need to be more attentive to what the tides are doing on our charter dates, because those drafts can change from the small boats to the large boats. At any rate, so this is our departure port at Alameda, Ballina Bay. Our low tide there is average of 7 feet. The next thing I want to also check is what the low tide average is at our destination. Our first destination is going to be Angel Island. So let me come back to the chart here, and let's go up to Angel Island, take a look at that, see what's going on up there. Angel Island, and our destination is going to be Ayala Cove, and we can see here that the average low tide is 9 feet. Okay, there is a little 6 foot area over here that you have to be careful of, but for the most part the cove is 9 feet. So I know that my departure port is going to be 7 feet. My first destination port is going to have an average low tide of 9 feet. We'll get off for lunch at Angel Island, get back on the boat, and enjoy sailing the afternoon, best winds down, and we'll be tacking along the Golden Gate Bridge, weather permitting. After we leave Angel Island, we'll come down here and do some tacking back and forth, let everybody have a chance of getting some photos in with the bridge behind them, and also sailing the infamous wind slot, or called the wind tunnel, the slot. After we're done there, we're going to be returning via McCovey Cove, where we're going to make another stop off. I also cut out chart snippets for the various places that I'm going to visit, like I mentioned. And I also have one for Angel Island. I'll show you that one. This is a chart snippet for Angel Island. Again, Ayala Cove is 9 feet average low tide, and put notations here. The reason that I print these out and put them in a binder is in case your app fails, or you run out of power, or your GPS on your boat fails. You have a handy reference of the local conditions as far as the tides are concerned. And for the most part, most sailors get used to what the low tides are at Angel Island, but I like to have a printout in case something happens to me. One of my crew members can pick up that chart and understand what's going on. So that's a snippet that I've prepared for Angel Island that I also take out with me on a binder on every charter. After visiting Angel Island and sailing the Upper Bay, we're going to end up at McCovey Cove. Let's take a look at what's going on down there at McCovey Cove. Okay, and McCovey Cove is just south of the Bay Bridge down here. And this is McCovey Cove here. AT&T Park is here. McCovey Cove also has an average low tide of 9 feet. So I know that for my sailing day, I'm going to be departing from a harbor whose average low tide is 7 feet. I'm going to be visiting Angel Island, whose average low tide is 9 feet. I'm going to be visiting Ayala Cove, whose average low tide is also 9 feet. I also have a snippet that I've printed out for McCovey Cove, and here's that snippet. Same thing, I put notations in here indicating that the average low tide is 9 feet. That goes into a binder and goes with me wherever I go. In sending out my notifications to my crew, I include copies of all these chart snippets. So everybody has a copy of all these charts and has a good indication of what we're going to be doing for the day. Now let's talk a little bit about strategy. Now, for those of us that sail out of Alameda, we know that it is a long haul from Alameda to Angel Island. It's approximately 11.2 nautical miles, and even if you were motor sailing in a beeline doing 6 knots, it's going to take you almost 2 hours to get there. So my strategy when I'm planning ahead of time is to pick a day early in the morning when the bay is full and there's an ebb tide going out. That ebb tide, that ebb current will help us in the morning, and we can ride that ebb current all the way out to the upper bay, and that'll help us get up to Angel Island much faster, as opposed to leaving when there's a flood tide coming in that you'll be battling against. Okay, so my strategy is to pick a day when the bay is full and there's an ebb tide going out, get us up here. At the same time, at the end of the day, when the flood starts coming back in, we can ride that flood tide in, and that'll help us get home much quicker. So now that I know what my average low tides are for my departing harbor and my destination harbors, the next thing we want to do is to actually check the tide tables to find out what the tide is actually going to be doing on the day you're going out and how it's going to affect the draft of the boat that you're taking out. And for that, we need to visit Tides Next.